Back and back fast, I hope. Nothing to note in the intro, so let's get started. This is a Borrow tier weapon, so automatically this goes into the it depends tier, because 1 week he could have it and not have it again for like another 8 weeks. So also technically as a farm, it would be placed in F tier, but honestly, it just depends on your timing, so that's where it will stay. But how is the weapon? It's pretty decent, actually. For its class, I'm pretty sure the Latron Prime is better, or the Tiburon Prime in semi-auto fire mode. But for it being a semi-automatic weapon, it's still kinda good for its class. It has more status chance than crit chance, which is weird to me, but the base version also had that, but it's not a bad amount of crit chance either. It can also equip the Deadly Sequence mod, giving it a critical delay without the drawback. It also has a decent ammo count, fires a bit slow, but does a good amount of damage. It's not a room clearing weapon by any means, but it's still pretty good. Solid high B for potential. Man, I love me some Railjack. This weapon is sort of annoying to farm. Only reason why is because of a thing of how Railjack works. In order to get the Quellor, it drops from these 4 enemies. They only spawn on these 3 missions, and only one of them because it's the main objective of the mission to kill that dude. Mainly if you're doing one of these 2 missions, Flexa and Cassios. I think, at least, I only did Cassios once because the one I chose was Corm's Belt, because it is the fastest by virtue of it being low level and only needing 1 objective. Problem, it can be one of 3 objectives, destroying an asteroid hangar, getting back to old content weapons, and that's an asteroid hangar. The other one I cannot remember at the moment. Well, it's a pulse turbine, doesn't matter anyway, goodbye. And the one we want, which is killing the galleon captain. He's also like level 10. The mission on average takes about 2.5 minutes. My fastest time was 2 minutes 25 seconds. However, like I said earlier, it has to be that objective when you go into the mission. And loading in and out of Railjack is a pain in the ass. That's a...
the Grenier pulse turbine and any resistance you encounter.
Why am I getting a pulse?
Failure.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time to just load in and out of the mission. Having to leave and then go right back in just to try and get the galleon captain kinda sucks. It's also just faster to do because the 2 I did on Cassio's Rest took 8 minutes and 54 seconds and 8 minutes 28 seconds. So you could probably see why I kept doing Corm's Belt. That and the fact that the weapon has a 7.31% chance to drop. It also shares that percentage with a melee weapon called the Pennant.
Galleon captain is off the board. A perfect outcome.
Hold on a moment. But enough about the mission. How many times did I do it, and what did I get? I did the mission 32 times, getting nothing 27 times, the Pennant blueprint 4 times, taking 1 hour, 41 minutes, 15 seconds, minus the loading in and out of missions, because how do I calculate that besides going back through the streams and going through every load time and just no. Please no. So it's gonna go into D tier for the farm because it does kinda suck, but there's also like nothing in D, and it's not terrible, but it's not the best. But the gun itself certainly is not D. Holy heck. I usually expect random guns like these to just suck, but it's more of a modern gun, so it's not bad. It's classified as a rifle, but it's a machine gun sporting 300 bullets in the mag and a charge shot that takes 50 bullets. It also has innate cold on it, letting you make various combinations with it like magnetic, viral, blast, and more. It has a stupid high status chance at 38%, and its crit is 12%. It's fine. However, its charge shot has a crit chance of 40% and a large amount of damage, resulting in the auto fire being used to when you want to clear ads, and a charge shot for tougher, bigger targets. Its reload, however, sucks. It takes a little bit to do, but it can probably be circumvented with certain frames, but the reload itself still sucks. It held its own fairly well, and I think it's an A tier gun. Probably low A tier, but still A tier. The Reconifex shares the same farm as Site 09's parts with the bounty system, with a pity system as well. But unlike Site 09's farm, you can get the blueprint for the barrel, stock, and receiver from the survival missions and Legicide harvest. Guess who didn't know that? This guy right here. I literally just farmed for the blueprint and bought the blueprints for the parts because I thought they only come from, well, the shop. I also only found out I could have farmed them as I was writing the script. Anyway, I did the bounty for their Reconifex blueprint 5 times, getting 4,200 Endo, a greater Unari lens, a greater Vazarin lens, Techrock Chitin, and finally, the blueprint. So, yeah. If you pity it, depending on your MR, it should be easy, like A to S tier easy. But if you decide to farm it, you're not gonna have a fun time when the highest percentage chance is 5.41 on the C rotation, and the blueprint itself is a 3.92% chance on the bounty. So probably a D to C, because the survival mission requires you to be attentive to the parasites going on your life support. So yeah, let's just talk about the weapon itself now, shall we? So the Reconifex is the Quellor, but better, warm, and crit oriented. It has a 28% crit chance and a faster fire rate, 200 bullets, and a higher crit multiplier, which I usually don't talk about, but it's at a 2.8%. I mean, times. Now the warm part comes in when reloading. When reloading, you can do a very easy perfect reload by hitting the button again in this bracket, giving yourself heat rounds that do 25% more damage and guaranteed status. Kinda nuts, and that low ribbon disposition is screaming at me, making me think the potential of this weapon is pretty good, and it held its own for the most part, and it only slightly fell off against overguard enemies, but what doesn't when you don't strip their armor? S tier. The Scourge is a pretty easy to obtain weapon. You get this from the Tenno Dojo through research. The prerequisite research being the Nami Skilla and the Tanbo, both with a very minute amount of resources needed to do so. The Scourge, on the other hand, needs 4,500 Oxium, which can be a sort of difficult task if you're starting out, but over time it's pretty easy to get just by playing Corpus Survivals and one farming frame to kill the Oxium Ospreys and you'll be fine. Now, building it back in the day would have been a little hard and knocked down below A tier because of the Nitane extract, but now, since it has been regulated to the Nightwave and it is substantially easier to obtain, it's a non-issue. And it requires a little bit more Oxium as well. So it's not S tier because of some of the resources, but if you have an abundance, you're fine. So, A tier. The weapon itself, though, is confusing. Like, it's the Grineer Shredder, shooting out mini explosive corrosive bubbles that apply the status very easily. It also has an alternate fire that throws the spear, causing enemies near it to have a bolt attraction to their face, but it's not like a massive magnet either. You have to practically already be aiming near their head anyway. And that's all it has. It's not really a primary weapon to invest in. Its clear synergy is with Haro and the Nell, since it's his signature weapon, but you're better off using, like, anything else, or just aiming better. I don't want to put it in F, because I don't think it goes there, but the Brayton Vandal, the Hema, the Karak Wraith, and the Gorgon can be built to do a lot, and the Gorgon has an Incarnate. Like, personally, it's a C tier weapon for me, but objectively, I think it's F tier. Unless I'm wrong, and I would happy to be wrong, because shooting corrosive bubbles at the Grineer is fun. This thing sucks to farm, and I say that being lucky. The Shedu's parts come from killing Symbolists at a 1% chance. So where do they spawn? Well, most of the way that I did it is by going to the Veil Proxima, yippee more railjack, and going to the node that has this flashing icon on it. That tells us that for 30 minutes, a sentient ship will be there. When going into the mission, it'll usually spawn a long ways away, so I do the outside objective of killing the Grineer ships first, then go to the ship, mainly so my railjack doesn't die, cause now we're in high level content and not the low level Corm's Belt. But you get inside the ship and your objective is to kill around 20 plus enemies. You wanna know how many Symbolists there are in those 20 enemies? Generally like 4 most of the time. It's nuts. A 1% chance to drop a part on an enemy that barely spawns. Then if you get the part, you have to complete the mission, wasting more time because there's 2 objectives in the mission. You also need 4 parts. It's insane. However, Symbolists also spawn during Archon hunts in higher numbers on defense and interception, according to the wiki. So why didn't I do that? Good question, moving on. I spent 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 11 seconds farming it for only having 44 Symbolists spawn, getting the chassis, handle, and receiver on my 2nd, 8th, and 9th runs. I had gotten the barrel with a friend because I was just testing out to see how many would spawn as well in this clip. So yeah, I'm lucky, but I'm not oblivious to how bad the farm is. But maybe it's not if you do the Archon defense and interception missions, but I've done them before, and I've barely if ever gotten a part, so D tier. My ranking for its potential doesn't get much better. This thing kinda blows. It doesn't do a lot of damage, and its passive is kinda dog shit when the radial attack proccing electric just does its job better. It has a decent crit and status chance, but only does fire damage on the initial shot and electric on the radius that it pulses out after you shoot it. It's kind of mid, honestly, against the Grineer at least. Fighting the Corpus, it kind of Your first thought when I say that is probably just armor strip forehead, and while yes, you're not wrong, I sort of don't take that into consideration because an armor stripped enemy is a dead enemy anyway. And 2, I'm looking at the weapon in sort of a vacuum by itself. I say sort of because I compare weapons to other weapons and sometimes with frame abilities, but yes, this weapon against Grineer kinda sucks, but Corpus, it obliterates. So for potential, I believe it's a B and could be built into a decent killing weapon, but at the same time, it still has a terrible passive with a low ammo count just to proc it, when it's really not worth proccing. Another video, and we are so close to getting the primaries done. We're also close to the 10th video in this series. So, if you've stayed this long, thank you. Appreciate it, and thank you for watching. The next video is going to be Lavo Prime, Shedu Prime, Dual Zorn Prime, the Sporothrix, and the Stephless. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Any critiques or anything you want to say about where I put the weapons, or what you think of their farm, put it down in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and take care of yourself.